You're listening to The Federal. This is Shubhakirtana. On today's podcast, we're going to talk about online gambling on the occasion of Tamil Nadu Governor RN Ravi sending the bill back to the state government meant to prohibit the practice and the regulation of online games passed by the Assembly on October 19 last year. The Governor has returned the bill after 4 months and also sought further clarification regarding the bill from the state government. On today's podcast, we have with us Advocate Rahul Unikrishnan. He is experienced in handling litigation pertaining to GST, income tax, insolvency laws, company laws, etc. before the Supreme Court, Madras High Court, Karnataka High Court and Delhi High Court, etc. Thank you so much, Rahul, for your time. So what does this move indicate? So the hearsay is that the governor has raised a few queries, yet many members of the ruling DMK view the action as a repetition of the confrontational attitude they charge him with.
Thank you so much for having me here. I will start by a small disclaimer that I have represented All India Gaming Federation before Madras High Court in the last 2 rounds of litigation, challenging the earlier legislations regulating or banning online gaming in the state. So coming to your question, leaving politics aside, under the Constitution, Article 200 of the Constitution, Governor has power to return a bill to the Assembly. The only condition is that after fresh consideration of the bill by the Assembly, if they pass the same bill, then Governor has to necessarily grant his assent. So if your query is with respect to the Governor's power to return a bill to the Assembly, yes, he has the power under the Constitution for fresh consideration. And I saw online media articles saying that there are queries raised by Raj Bhavan.
Yes.
This is perfectly valid. He has all the power to raise queries for fresh consideration by the Assembly.
Right. So yet many members of the ruling DMK view the action as a repetition of the confrontational attitude they charge him with. So how do you see this?
It could be because there are quite a lot of examples where Raj Bhavan is sitting on few bills, right, passed by Assembly. So if you look at the practice and the history in the recent history, I wouldn't blame the ruling government when they make the allegation against Raj Bhavan, because it's been happening quite often. But at the same time, it is not illegal or unconstitutional. So that is the difference.
Right. So what is the status of the bill at present?
At present, the bill has been returned to the Assembly. So for the time being, there is no law in the state of Tamil Nadu banning or regulating online gaming, because there was an ordinance which was promulgated in October last year. Right. And this bill, what happened is that was in effect to replace that ordinance. All right.
I see.
And what happened is that when the bill was pending in Raj Bhavan for consideration for assent of the Governor, many companies, including the association All India Gaming Federation, filed a writ petition in the Madras High Court challenging the validity of the ordinance. Okay, because all of us were under the impression that the ordinance was still in force. But what happened is that on the day of admission, on the date of hearing, the state government, through its council, informed the court that the ordinance, even though it was signed by the Governor, it has not been given effect to. Right. Which technically meant that the ordinance was only a sheet of paper. It was not given any force, or it was not given effect to in the state of Tamil Nadu. So those writ petitions were disposed of because they were premature. So that is one of the main reasons why the state government was putting pressure on Raj Bhavan to decide on this granting of his assent to the bill, which now has been returned. So technically speaking, we do not have any legislation or regulation governing
for now,
online
right?
gaming in the state of Tamil Nadu. Yes.
Right. So the bill was approved by the legislature in October. So following the suicides of 20 or so persons who had lost money playing online games. So despite the law being passed by the previous ADMK government, it was overturned by the court. So what changes have occurred since DMK took office?
So, see, first of all, that earlier piece of legislation by the previous regime was struck down by the High Court for multiple reasons. Because, to be very frank, that was a half-hearted attempt by the government. There were inherent contradictions within several provisions, and as the High Court pointed out, there was quite a lot of problems, like on proportionality. So one main argument point which the High Court raised was that it is disproportionate. So you may regulate, but not outright ban. And what was the study conducted? Was there any study? Is your total outright ban backed by any statistics? So there were several questions raised by the High Court. So after this judgment came, obviously the government filed a SLP, specially petition to the Supreme Court, which is pending. There is no stay against the order of the Madras High Court. Right. So the specially petition is still pending in the Supreme Court on that legislation. But when the DMK government came in, they appointed a committee headed by retired Judge of the Madras High Court, Justice Chandru, to look into these issues. So he, in fact, did a thorough job of a lot of survey, had consultations with stakeholders. And in fact, if you will see that the ordinance contains a detailed statement of objects and reasons, going into how Justice Chandru, the committee went into this problem, what they identified, what are the problems they have identified. So in that, so if you look at the effort, yes, the ordinance was actually, quite a lot of work has gone into this ordinance. But at the same time, what has happened is that they have again banned all games without any differentiation.
Right.
So that is what has happened.
Right. So the bill, it talks about banning gambling or regulating it. Could you please clarify?
It is prohibition. It categorically says that online gambling is prohibited. All right. And then what happens is that it says online games of chance specified in the schedule is prohibited. So in the schedule, they have included rummy and poker. So they have outright banned rummy and poker. So it's not regulation.
So will the other online games be controlled at the same time, or how does it work?
See, that again depends on how you construe the definition of games, game of skill, game of chance, and all those things. So that will require a lot of application of mind, and then how the bill is introduced again. So as far as rummy and poker, they are banned straight away. And that is the contention of the companies, because rummy and poker, these are not games of chance.
Right.
So these are games of skill. Rummy, when you talk about rummy, the Supreme Court has held that rummy is a game of skill. And Madras High Court in the previous round has held poker is a game of skill. So you cannot now, by way of a legal fiction, say that rummy and poker are games of chance, and thereby they are banned. So that is the problematic route which this bill or ordinance has taken.
Right. I see. Right. Okay. It's quite deep though. All right. Okay. So the state actually clarified that betting and gambling does cover online gambling, right? But in offline, the person knows the opponent. But however, in online games, the person is playing against the computer code, which is returned by the game developer, I suppose, right? So this leads to the higher chances of cheating or, swindling. So, how do you see this? So the bill aims to ban such online.
So what they're trying to do is that they're trying to differentiate physical rummy and poker, if I may call it, and online rummy and poker. What they're saying is that when it comes to online games, these are based on random outcome generators, which the companies have access to, all right, and that forms the backbone of the whole industry. And this can be manipulated to the advantage of the company, to the gaming provider. So that is a predominant theme which runs through the ordinance.
Right.
And then, so my answer is twofold here. One, there is no data to support this. Two,
right.
Random outcome generators and these things are certified. There are international bodies certifying these things. So when you're talking about self-regulation here.
Yeah.
So in media, you are aware, it's a self-regulated body. So internationally, gaming is also self-regulated. So these are self-regulated regulatory mechanisms, and then there are standards. So to say that, without any study or anything of that sort, random outcome generators can be manipulated without going to the technical details of it is this arbitrary and disproportionate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I also wanted to ask you this. So besides online games can be regarded as falling within the definition of e-commerce, I spoke with a bunch of activists, and they say the law authorizes the central government to take measures to prevent unfair trade practices in e-commerce and protect the interests and rights of consumers. So your point of view on this?
I think this is not an e-commerce. E-commerce is, and I don't know how this is unfair trade practice also. So I will accept their argument to the extent that the central government can regulate it, because that is already happening.
Right.
What has happened recently is that there are these draft intermediary guidelines under the Information Technology Act by the central government, wherein now what has happened is that online gaming has been given to the Ministry of Information Technology, and there are draft guidelines on online gaming also included in the intermediary guideline.
Right.
So the central government has actually put out a draft guideline regulation on online gaming, intermediary, winnings, internet, online gaming, and all those things through the draft guideline.
Right.
All right. So they are They are actually trying to regulate it. So let us see the final version of the intermediary guidelines.
Right. Okay.
If I may add, so that will also add a small complication, because once the central government takes online gaming under the Information Technology Act,
right,
all right, then the scope of state government to legislate on the same online gaming will reduce.
Yes.
There should not be any repugnancy to the central law. So if the central government is trying to regulate and thereby promote gaming, online gaming, then if there is a parallel state government legislation banning online gaming, it will be straight away repugnant to the central government rules, and the central government rules will prevail over the state government. So we'll have to now worry about repugnancy also.
Right. Okay.
So to that extent, I may say that, if this is one of the queries raised by Governor, it is a valid query in terms of repugnancy. Yes.
Right.
This development is recent. It came, I think, in the last 2-3 months. Yeah.
Sure. Right. Should there be a widespread public consultation to ensure the economic rights, individual freedom, and social imperatives, all of these, they remain in balance?
There should be widespread, wide consultation on how this should be regulated, how this can be promoted, and also on the taxing aspect of it, how this can be properly taxed, so that the industry doesn't go underground.
Right.
So so these are
And also let's discuss the blurred lines between gaming and gambling?
See, we can actually discuss that for hours. So it's not a.
I mean, a basic thing, a basic difference.
See, I would say, for the state government, all right, they have under the constitution something known as state list, a list of items on which they can legislate. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So in that there is entry 34, which talks about betting and gambling.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now, in order to legislate on online gaming, they have to necessarily show that all these games fall under the definition of betting or gambling. But the problem here is, when you're talking about a game of skill,
Mm-hmm.
like Rummy, which is internationally, and poker,
Okay.
which is internationally acknowledged as games of skill, it will not be as gambling, because gambling is something which involves an element of speculation, over which, we do not have an outcome on the result. But with skill, you have some control over the outcome of the event. That is the difference.
Right.
So the differentiating factor is my skill, the player's skill. And if that skill can control the outcome, or if it can get over the speculative part of that event, then it will not be betting or gambling. It will be a pure game of skill.
Right.
That is my understanding.
Right. And my last question to you. So when the 2005, the Gambling Act was drafted, the world was very different. No Twitter, no Facebook, no YouTube. And gambling was, how do I put it? It was seen as a shady activity, typically conducted in a smoky high street betting shops. You certainly couldn't use smartphone to gamble 24/7 with a couple of clicks. But now, it's changed. So it's a bit scary.
I wouldn't say that it is scary. All it requires is a better understanding of how the industry works, how this can be used, how it can be better regulated without harming anyone. I would say there are actually good examples of good legislations regulating online gaming from states like Nagaland. They have a very beautiful working legislation which regulates online games of skill, chance, and all those things. Yeah, so we have examples within the country itself.
No, but I asked you the question because there is a link between exposure to gambling and suffering from suicide, etc. Right? This is particularly alarming. That increasing suicide cases.
It is alarming, and I really do not know how to answer this. See, if you're talking about statistics, let's see. You mentioned about 20 suicides. All right. Is there any statistics on number of deaths caused by alcohol?
Right.
And if you look at, I'm sure the number would be more than that. So the first response should be like, let's ban alcohol. Is that the way forward? I definitely don't think so.
Right.
So we need to find. That is one of the main reasons why we should have proper consultation with all stakeholders.
I'm sure.
And come up with a better regulation, a workable solution where the interests of society are also protected.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks.